I heard my wife on phone telling her friend that she hated me and had never loved me. She claimed she only married me because her late mom asked her to accept me. So I started a journey of revenge. But the unexpected suddenly happened and changed everything. Hello. Thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Stephen from Fletcher's Lake, Nova Scotia, Canada. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's dive into the details of today's story. Daniel sat in the living room, the glow of the TV flickering across his face. It was late, the kind of quiet that settles over a house when the day's work is done. At 52, he'd grown used to these evenings. Him on the couch, Elena upstairs, the hum of their suburban life wrapping around them like a familiar blanket. But tonight, something felt off. The air was heavier, like it carried a secret he wasn't supposed to know. He muted the TV, his ears catching a faint sound, Elena's voice, drifting down from the bedroom. She was on the phone, her tone light, almost playful. Daniel didn't mean to listen, not really. But her words slipped through the silence, sharp and clear, like a knife slicing through butter. I never loved him, you know, she said, her voice casual, like she was talking about the weather. It was all for Mom. She begged me to marry him before she passed. Said he was stable, good for me. But honestly, I've hated every minute. And the others? He's so clueless, he doesn't even suspect. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The remote slipped from his hand, landing on the carpet with a soft thud. His chest tightened, a dull ache spreading like wildfire. Hated him, never loved him. And who were the others? The words echoed in his mind, each one landing like a punch. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of shared dinners, holidays, quiet mornings. And it was all a lie? He stood, his legs shaky, and climbed the stairs, his heart pounding louder with each step. The bedroom door was cracked open, a sliver of light spilling into the hallway. Elena was sitting on the bed, her back to him, still on the phone. She laughed, a sound that used to warm him but now felt like a betrayal. Elena, he said, his voice low but firm. She froze, her shoulders stiffening. She turned, her face pale, the phone still pressed to her ear. What did you mean by that? He asked, stepping into the room. What you said on the phone. About hating me. About the others. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then she forced a laugh, too loud, too sharp. Oh, Daniel, come on. It was just a joke. You know how we girls talk. Exaggerating for a laugh. Don't take it so seriously. But her face didn't match her words. Her smile was tight, her cheeks flushed, and her eyes darted to the side, avoiding his gaze. Daniel felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He'd seen that look before, when she'd lied about denting the car, when she'd claimed to be working late but smelled faintly of wine. This wasn't a joke. This was something deeper, something darker. Elena, he said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. If it's a joke, why do you look so scared right now? She opened her mouth, then closed it, her hands twisting the edge of the blanket. I'm not scared, she said, but her voice trembled. You're overreacting. It's nothing. Nothing. That word stung more than the rest. 10 years, and she could dismiss it all as nothing. Daniel turned and walked out, his footsteps heavy on the stairs. He didn't trust himself to stay, not with the anger boiling under his skin. He needed space, time to think, to figure out what this meant. Back in the living room, he sank onto the couch, his mind racing. He thought about their life together, their first date at that little Italian restaurant, her laugh when he spilled sauce on his shirt, the way she'd cried at their wedding, her mother beaming from the front row, the quiet nights they'd spent watching old movies. Her head on his shoulder. Had it all been a lie? Had she been pretending, all these years, just to please her dying mother? And who were the others? The phrase gnawed him, sharp and relentless. Other men? Affairs? The thought made his stomach churn. He trusted her, loved her, built a life with her. But now, that life felt like a house of cards, ready to collapse. He glanced at the clock, 11:47 p.m. Elena was still upstairs, probably finishing her call, pretending nothing had happened. But Daniel couldn't pretend. Not anymore. He needed to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. He grabbed his phone and opened the App Store, his fingers trembling as he typed tracking app. He'd never done anything like this before, never thought he'd need to. But if Elena was hiding something, he had to find out. He downloaded the app, his heart pounding as it installed. It felt wrong, invasive, but he pushed the guilt aside. If she was lying, he deserved to know. He crept back upstairs, the house silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Elena was asleep now, her phone on the nightstand, the screen dark. Daniel hesitated, his hand hovering over it. This was a line he couldn't uncross. But then he thought of her words, "I never loved him," and his resolve hardened. He unlocked her phone. Her passcode was their anniversary, a detail that now felt like a cruel irony. He opened her messages, scrolling through the names. There, near the top, was Mark, her business partner. The texts were flirty, suggestive, full of late-night plans and inside jokes. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," one said. "Daniel's working late again." Perfect timing. Daniel's vision blurred, his chest tight. Mark. Of course. The man who always lingered too long at their parties, who laughed too loudly at Elena's jokes. Daniel had never liked him, but he dismissed it as paranoia. Now it all made sense. He copied the messages, his hands shaking, and installed the tracking app, syncing it to his own phone. Then he slipped her phone back onto the nightstand and retreated to the living room, his mind spinning. 2 years, the text said. 2 years of lies, of secrets, of betrayal. He sat there, staring at the TV, the screen still muted. The house felt different now, colder, like a stranger's home. He thought about confronting her, demanding answers, but he knew she'd deny it, twist it, make him feel like the crazy one. No, he needed more proof. He needed to see how deep this went, who else was involved, how long she'd been playing him for a fool. The clock ticked past midnight, the silence pressing in. Daniel made a decision then, one that would change everything. He wasn't going to let her win. He wasn't going to be the clueless husband anymore. He'd find out the truth, and when he did, he'd make her pay. Daniel woke up on the couch, his neck stiff, his eyes heavy. The living room was dim, the early morning light filtering through the blinds. He hadn't slept much, maybe an hour or two, his mind replaying Elena's words like a broken record. "I never loved him. He's so clueless." The sting was still there, sharp and raw, like a splinter under his skin. He rubbed his face, trying to shake the fog from his head, but the weight of last night clung to him like a shadow. He glanced at the clock. 6:15 a.m. Elena would be up soon, getting ready for the boutique. She'd walk down the stairs, pour her coffee, act like nothing had happened. The thought made his stomach churn. How could she do that? How could she look him in the eye, knowing she'd lied for years? Knowing she'd been with Mark, maybe others, while he'd been working late, building their life, their future? He grabbed his phone, opening the tracking app. The little dot showed Elena's phone still upstairs, in their bedroom. He stared at it, his heart pounding. This was real. He was doing this, spying on his wife, digging into her secrets. It felt wrong, like he was crossing a line he couldn't come back from. But then he remembered her laugh, her pale face, the text with Mark. No, he thought. She crossed the line first. This is on her. He stood, his legs shaky, and headed to the kitchen. The coffee maker was still warm from last night, the smell faint but familiar. He poured himself a cup, the mug hot against his hands. He needed to think, to plan. He couldn't confront her yet, not without more proof. If he did, she'd deny it, twist it, make him feel like the crazy one. He'd seen her do it before, small lies, excuses, little deflections that left him doubting himself. Not this time. This time, he'd be sure. He opened his laptop, his fingers hovering over the keys. Where to start? He thought about Mark, the smug grin, the way he always lingered too long at their parties. 2 years, the text said. 2 years of sneaking around, laughing behind his back. But were there others? Elena had said the others on the phone. Who else? How deep did this go? He started with the basics, her credit card statements, their joint account. He'd never looked at them closely before, trusting her to handle the finances. Now, he regretted that. He scrolled through the transactions, his eyes scanning for anything unusual. There, last month, a hotel charge in the city, 2 nights. She told him it was a business trip, a boutique conference. But why was the room billed for 2 people? His chest tightened, his breath shallow. He copied the charge, saving it to a folder on his desktop. Evidence, he thought. I need evidence. Next, he checked the security cameras. They'd installed them last year, after a neighbor's car was stolen. He'd never thought to look at the footage before, but now he wondered. He logged into the app, scrolling through the clips. There, 2 weeks ago, late at night, Elena's car pulling into the driveway. She wasn't alone. A man stepped out, his face shadowy but familiar. Tom, their neighbor. Daniel's stomach dropped. Tom, the guy who always waved too cheerfully, who'd helped them move furniture last summer. Tom, who was married to Sarah, with 2 kids and a dog. Tom, who'd been in their house, laughing at their table, while sneaking around with Elena. Daniel paused the video, his hands trembling. He zoomed in, confirming it. Tom, stepping out of her car, glancing around like he knew he shouldn't be there. Daniel felt sick, the coffee turning sour in his stomach. He saved the clip, adding it to the folder. 2 men now, Mark and Tom. How many more? How long had this been going on? He thought back, trying to piece it together. The late nights, the work emergencies, the way she'd started dressing differently, new perfume, tighter dresses, brighter lipstick. He'd noticed, but he'd brushed it off, telling himself it was nothing. He'd been so busy with work, so focused on his projects, he hadn't wanted to see it. Now, it was all he could see. He remembered their anniversary last year. He'd been late, stuck at the office, finishing a design for a client. Elena had been quiet that night, her smile tight. He'd thought she was just tired, but now, he wondered, had she been with Mark that night? Or Tom? Or someone else? The memory twisted in his mind, sharp and painful. He'd failed her, he knew that. He'd been distant, distracted, too caught up in his work. But did that justify this? Did that give her the right to cheat, to lie, to laugh about it with her friends? He closed the laptop, his head throbbing. He needed more. The hotel charge, the video, they were a start, but he needed to know everything. He opened the tracking app again, watching the dot move. Elena was awake now, upstairs, getting ready. He could hear her footsteps, the faint hum of the shower. She'd come down soon, act normal, pretend everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. He made a decision then, cold and calculated. He wouldn't confront her yet. Not until he had everything, the proof, the names, the lies. He built a case, like one of his architectural designs, piece by piece, until it was airtight. And then, when he was ready, he'd make her pay. Not just for the cheating, but for the humiliation, the betrayal, the years she'd stolen from him. He opened his banking app, his fingers steady now. He started transferring assets, savings, investments, anything she could claim if things got messy. He moved it to a new account, one she didn't know about. He felt a flicker of guilt, but he pushed it down. She'd done worse. She'd lied, cheated, laughed about it. This was self-defense, he told himself. This was survival. He heard her footsteps on the stairs, and he closed the laptop, slipping his phone into his pocket. She walked into the kitchen, her hair damp, her smile bright. Morning, she said, pouring herself a coffee. You're up early. Couldn't sleep, he said, his voice steady, his face a mask. She didn't notice, didn't see the storm behind his eyes. She sipped her coffee, chatting about the boutique, the weather, the usual small talk. He nodded, pretending to listen, but inside, he was planning. He watched her leave, her car pulling out of the driveway, the tracking app showing her heading to the boutique. He knew Mark would be there, waiting. He knew what they'd do, what they'd say. And he'd be watching, waiting, gathering every piece of evidence he needed. By the time she came home that night, he'd have more. More proof, more lies, more reasons to hate her. And when he was ready, he'd strike. Not with words, not with tears, but with cold, calculated revenge. She'd see then. She'd see what it felt like to lose everything. Daniel sat in his office, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence. The clock on the wall ticked past 10 a.m., but he wasn't working. His laptop was open, the screen glowing with the tracking app, the little dot showing Elena at the boutique. He'd been watching her all morning, imagining her with Mark, laughing, flirting, acting like nothing was wrong. The thought made his chest tight, his hands clenching into fists. But he wasn't just sitting there, stewing in his anger. No, he was doing something about it. Today was the day he'd strike, the day he'd start making her pay. He opened the folder on his desktop, the one labeled evidence. Inside were the screenshots of her texts with Mark, the hotel receipt, the security camera clip of Tom sneaking out of her car. It wasn't enough to confront her, not yet, but it was enough to start. He decided last night, lying awake on the couch, that he wouldn't just tell her he knew. He'd show her. He'd show everyone. She'd humiliated him, laughed about it with her friends, and now he'd humiliate her right back. He opened an anonymous email account, his fingers steady as he typed. He attached the screenshots of her texts with Mark, the ones where she'd said, "Daniel's working late again." Perfect timing. He added a short message. "Thought your customers should know who they're supporting. Elena's boutique isn't as perfect as it seems." He hesitated, his cursor hovering over the send button. This was it, the first strike. Once he did this, there was no going back. But then he thought of her laugh, her pale face, the lies she'd told. He clicked send, and the email vanished into the void. He leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding. It was done. He'd sent the email to a local gossip blog, the kind that thrived on scandals like this. They'd post it, he knew they would. And then the customers would see, the neighbors would see, everyone would see. Elena's perfect little world would start to crumble, and he'd be there, watching, waiting. He spent the next hour refreshing the blog, his stomach twisting with anticipation. Then, there it was, a new post, the screenshots front and center, the headline bold and ugly. Local boutique owner caught cheating. Is this who you're supporting? The comments were already flooding in, people calling her names, vowing to boycott the boutique. Daniel felt a flicker of satisfaction, sharp and cold. It was working. She'd feel it soon. The whispers, the stares, the judgment. She'd know what it felt like to be exposed. He closed the laptop and headed to the boutique, parking a block away. He didn't go inside, not yet. He just watched from his car, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Elena was there, behind the counter, smiling at a customer. Mark was near the back, rearranging displays, his smug grin making Daniel's blood boil. They had no idea what was coming. But then, he saw it. Elena's face changed, her smile faltering. She pulled out her phone, her eyes widening, her hand trembling. She'd seen the post. She knew. She turned to Mark, her voice rising, sharp and panicked. Daniel couldn't hear the words, but he could see the tension, the way Mark shrugged, his face tight. They argued, Elena gesturing wildly, Mark shaking his head. Daniel watched, his satisfaction growing. She was unraveling, right there, in front of everyone. Customers started leaving, their faces confused, some whispering to each other. The boycott was starting, just like he'd planned. He drove home, the satisfaction lingering, but it wasn't enough. Mark wasn't the only one. There was Tom, too, the neighbor, the one who'd smiled at him over the fence, who'd helped carry their new couch last summer. Tom, who'd been sneaking around with Elena, right under his nose. Daniel needed to hit him, too, to make sure everyone knew. He stopped at the coffee shop, the one where the neighbors gathered every morning. He sat at a corner table, listening, waiting. Sarah, Tom's wife, was there, chatting with a friend, her laugh loud and cheerful. Daniel felt a pang of guilt, but he pushed it down. She deserved to know, he told himself. She deserved the truth. He leaned over, casual, like he was just making small talk. Heard some rumors about Tom, he said, keeping his voice low. People are saying he's been spending a lot of time with Elena. Late nights, that kind of thing. Thought you should know. Sarah's face changed, her smile fading, her eyes narrowing. What are you talking about? She said, her voice sharp. Daniel shrugged, playing innocent. Just what I heard. Might not be true, but it's going around. Thought you'd want to check. He left then, leaving her staring after him, her coffee forgotten. By evening, the neighborhood was buzzing. Sarah had confronted Tom, loud enough for the whole street to hear. Daniel watched from his porch, his coffee cold in his hand. Sarah was yelling, Tom trying to explain, his face red, his hands raised. Neighbors peeked out their windows, whispering, pointing. Daniel felt another flicker of satisfaction, but it was tinged with something else, something heavy, something dark. Sarah didn't deserve this. Neither did their kids. But Elena did, he told himself. Elena started this. When Elena came home that night, her face was pale, her eyes red. Daniel, she said, her voice shaking. Something's happening. Someone's spreading lies about me, about the boutique. Customers are leaving. Sales are down. I don't know what to do. He looked at her, his face a mask. That's terrible, he said, his voice calm, controlled. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. You should talk to Mark, see if he knows anything. She flinched at Mark's name, her eyes darting to the side. She knew, he could see it, but she didn't say it. She just nodded, her hands twisting together, and went upstairs. He sat there, listening to her footsteps, the silence settling around him. It was working, just like he'd planned. But then his phone buzzed, a text from Lydia, his sister. Heard about Elena's boutique, it said. People are talking. Daniel, if you're behind this, you need to stop. Revenge won't fix this. It'll destroy you too. He stared at the message, his stomach twisting. Lydia always saw through him, always knew when he was hurting. But she didn't understand, not really. She hadn't heard Elena's laugh, hadn't seen the texts, the video. She didn't know what it felt like to be betrayed, to be laughed at, to be nothing. He typed a reply, short and curt. I'm fine. Stay out of it. He hit send, ignoring the guilt that followed. He opened the tracking app again, watching the dot move. Elena was upstairs, probably on the phone, trying to fix this, trying to save her perfect little world. But it was too late. The cracks were spreading, the lies unraveling. And Daniel wasn't done. Not yet. He'd hit Mark, he'd hit Tom, and he'd keep going until she had nothing left. Until she felt what he felt. Until she paid. Daniel sat in the dim light of his home office, the glow of the laptop screen casting shadows across his face. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Elena was upstairs, probably asleep, or maybe staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how her perfect little world had started to crumble. Daniel didn't care, not tonight. Tonight, he had something else to focus on, something he'd found in her office, something that changed everything. It had started earlier that evening, when he'd gone into her office to check the tracking app. He'd been restless, his mind replaying the day's events, the boycott at the boutique, Sarah's screams, Lydia's warning. He needed more proof, more ammunition. He'd rifled through her desk, looking for anything, receipts, notes, anything to add to his folder. And then he'd found it, tucked under a stack of invoices, a small, leather-bound journal, the kind she used to write in years ago, before they drifted apart. He'd hesitated, his fingers tracing the worn cover. This was private, personal, a line he hadn't crossed before. But then he thought of her laugh, her pale face, the text with Mark, the video with Tom. She'd crossed lines, too. She'd crossed them first. He opened the journal, his heart pounding, and started reading. The entries were scattered, some short, some long, but they all told the same story. A story he hadn't expected, a story that made his chest ache in a way he didn't want to feel. There, in her messy handwriting, was the truth, or at least her version of it. Mom begged me to marry him, one entry said, dated just before their wedding. She said he was stable, good for me, that I'd regret saying no. I didn't love him, not really, but she was dying, and I couldn't say no. I thought I could make it work, but I feel trapped, suffocated every day. Daniel's breath caught, his fingers tightening on the pages. Trapped? Suffocated? He thought back to their wedding, her smile, her tears. He'd thought they were happy tears, but now he wondered. Had she been pretending, even then? Had she been counting the days, waiting for her mother to pass, waiting to be free? He kept reading, each entry sharper, more painful. Daniel's always working. Another entry said, from 2 years ago. He's never here, not really. I'm invisible to him. Mark sees me, though. He listens, he cares. I know it's wrong, but it feels good, for once, to matter. Daniel felt a pang, sharp and cold. He remembered those years, the late nights at the office, the missed dinners, the anniversaries he'd forgotten. He'd been busy, yes, but he'd thought she understood. He'd thought she was okay, but she wasn't. She'd been lonely, and Mark had been there, waiting, watching. The journal went on, detailing her guilt, her shame, but also her resentment. Tom was a mistake, one entry said, from last summer. I was drunk, angry, tired of feeling like nothing. But Daniel didn't notice, didn't care. He never does. Daniel's stomach twisted, the guilt mixing with his anger. He had noticed, hadn't he? He'd noticed her new perfume, her tighter dresses, but he'd brushed it off, told himself it was nothing. He'd failed her, he knew that. But did that justify this? Did that give her the right to cheat, to lie, to laugh about it with her friends? He closed the journal, his hands trembling. He wanted to hate her, to keep hating her, but the journal made it harder. It wasn't just about her betrayal anymore. It was about his, too. His neglect, his absence, his failure to see her. He thought about confronting her, demanding answers, but he knew she'd twist it, make him feel like the crazy one. No, he needed to do this right, to face her with the truth, to see if she'd own it or deny it. He waited until the next morning, when she came downstairs, her face pale, her eyes red. She'd been crying. He could tell, but he didn't care, not yet. He held up the journal, his voice steady, controlled. "I found this," he said, watching her face. "Your journal. I read it. All of it. The truth about us, about Mark, about Tom. You say you felt trapped, suffocated. You say I didn't see you. But you cheated, Elena. You lied. You laughed about it. How do you explain that?" Her eyes widened, her hands trembling. "You went through my things," she said, her voice shaking. "That's private, Daniel. You had no right." "No right," he snapped, his voice rising. "You had no right to cheat, to lie, to humiliate me. But you did. And now I know why. You felt trapped. You felt invisible. But that doesn't make this okay. That doesn't make you the victim here." She flinched, her face pale, but then she straightened, her eyes narrowing. "You want to talk about victims?" she said, her voice sharp. "You were never here, Daniel. You loved your work more than me. I was just a trophy wife to you, something to check off your list. Mark saw me, Tom saw me, because you didn't. You failed me first." The words hit him like a punch, sharp and raw. He wanted to argue, to deny it, but he couldn't, not completely. He had failed her, he knew that. But that didn't change what she'd done, what she'd said. "So you cheated," he said, his voice low, steady. "You lied. You laughed about it. And now, you're blaming me. That's not fair, Elena. That's not right." She opened her mouth, then closed it, her hands twisting together. "I'm not saying it's right," she said, her voice softer, but still sharp. "But I'm not the only one who broke this marriage. You did, too. And now I'm done. I'm leaving, Daniel. I'm leaving you for Mark. He promised me a new life, a real life. Something you never gave me." The words hung in the air, heavy, final. Daniel stared at her, his chest tight, his mind racing. Leaving for Mark? After everything, after the lies, the betrayal, she was choosing him? He felt the anger rise, hot and sharp, drowning out the guilt, the pain. "You think Mark's going to save you?" he said, his voice cold, controlled. "You think he's going to fix this? He's using you, Elena. He's been using you all along. And when I'm done, you'll see that. You'll see what it feels like to lose everything." She flinched, her face pale, but she didn't back down. "Do your worst," she said, her voice steady, defiant. "But remember, Daniel, this isn't just on me. It's on you too." She turned and walked out, leaving him standing there, the journal in his hand, the silence pressing in. He wanted to hate her, to keep hating her, but the journal, her words, her defiance, they made it harder. He thought about his plan, the leaks, the rumors, the destruction he'd started. It wasn't enough, not anymore. He needed to hit harder, to make her feel what he felt. But now, he wasn't sure who he was punishing, her or himself. Daniel sat on the couch, the living room dark except for the faint glow of the streetlight filtering through the blinds. The house felt empty, colder than it used to, like it knew something was broken, something that couldn't be fixed. Elena was upstairs, probably packing, or maybe just staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how to salvage what was left of her life. Daniel didn't care, not anymore. He'd cared too much, for too long, and look where it had gotten him, betrayed, humiliated, alone. He opened his laptop, the screen lighting up his face. The tracking app was still there, the little dot showing Elena's phone in the bedroom. He stared at it, his chest tight, his mind replaying their argument from yesterday. "I'm leaving you for Mark," she'd said, her voice steady, defiant. The words had cut deep, sharper than the journal, sharper than the texts, sharper than anything. Mark, the man who'd used her, who'd laughed behind his back, who'd taken everything. And she was choosing him. He closed the app, his hands trembling. It wasn't enough, what he'd done so far. The leaks, the rumors, the boycott, they'd hurt her. Yes, but not enough. She still thought she could walk away, start over, leave him behind like he was nothing. He couldn't let that happen. He needed to finish this, to make her feel what he felt, to make her see what she'd done. But now, he wasn't sure if it was about her anymore, or if it was about him, about proving something, fixing something, filling the hole she'd left. He opened his email, scrolling through the messages. There, near the top, was one from the gossip blog, the one he'd sent the screenshots to. "Thanks for the tip," it said. "Biggest story we've had in months. Let us know if you've got more." He stared at it, his stomach twisting. More. They wanted more. And he had more: the hotel receipt, the video with Tom, the journal. He could send it all, blow it wide open, make sure she had nowhere to hide. But then he remembered Lydia's text, her warning. Revenge won't fix this. It'll destroy you too. He'd ignored her then, but now he wasn't so sure. He closed the laptop, his head throbbing. He needed to think, to plan, but the silence was deafening, pressing in on him like a weight. He stood, pacing the room, his footsteps loud in the quiet. The boutique was done. He knew that. The boycott had worked. The customers were gone. The sales were tanking. Mark had betrayed her, stolen her share of the profits, disappeared into the night. And Tom was suing her now for emotional distress, dragging her into court, making her face the mess she'd made. Sarah was involved, too, her face pale, her eyes red, her kids confused. Daniel felt a pang of guilt, sharp and cold, but he pushed it down. This wasn't his fault. Elena started this. Elena did this. But then he saw it, on the coffee table, a letter addressed to him, from his boss. He opened it, his hands trembling, and read the words, sharp and final. "Due to recent events and concerns about your conduct, we regret to inform you that your position has been terminated." Terminated. Fired. He stared at the letter, his chest tight, his mind racing. They knew. They traced the leaks back to him, the anonymous emails, the rumors. They'd seen it all, and now they saw him, vindictive, unstable, a liability. He was done, just like Elena, just like the boutique. He sank onto the couch, the letter crumpling in his hand. His job, his career, the thing he'd poured himself into, the thing Elena had blamed him for, it was gone. He thought about his colleagues, their whispers, their stares. He thought about his clients, their trust, their respect. All gone, because of this, because of her, because of him. He felt the anger rise, hot and sharp, but it was mixed with something else, something heavy, something dark. Guilt, shame, regret. He heard footsteps on the stairs, and he looked up, seeing Elena standing there, her face pale, her eyes red. "Daniel," she said, her voice shaking. "We need to talk. This isn't working. The boutique's gone. Mark's gone. Tom's suing me. I don't know what to do. I need help." He looked at her, his face a mask, his voice cold. "Help?" he said, his tone steady, controlled. "You want help? After everything? After the lies, the cheating, the journal? After you said you're leaving me for Mark? You think I owe you anything?" She flinched, her hands twisting together. "I'm not saying you owe me," she said, her voice softer, but still sharp. "But this isn't just on me. You did this too. The leaks, the rumors. You think I don't know it was you? You wanted to destroy me, and now, you have. But look at you, Daniel. Look at us. We're both broken. We're both lost." The words hit him, sharp and raw, but he didn't want to hear them, didn't want to feel them. "You started this," he said, his voice low, steady. "You lied. You cheated. You laughed about it. You don't get to play the victim now." She stared at him, her eyes wet, her face pale. "I'm not playing the victim," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm trying to fix this, to take accountability. I've started therapy, Daniel. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did, why I hurt you. But you're not trying. You're just hurting and hurting me and hurting yourself. And it's not fixing anything." He stood, his chest tight, his mind racing. He wanted to argue, to deny it, but he couldn't, not completely. She was right, in a way. He was hurting and hurting her, and it wasn't fixing anything. But he didn't know how to stop, didn't know how to let go. He turned and walked out, leaving her standing there, the silence pressing in. He drove to Lydia's house, his hands gripping the steering wheel, his head throbbing. She opened the door, her face worried, her eyes searching his. "Daniel," she said, her voice soft. "What's going on? You look terrible." He sat on her couch, his hands trembling, and told her everything. The journal, the argument, the job, the guilt. She listened, her face pale, her eyes wet. "Daniel," she said, when he was done, "you need to stop. This revenge, it's not fixing anything. It's destroying you too. You need to let go, to heal, to find a way forward. Not this. Not this." He stared at her, his chest tight, his mind racing. He wanted to argue, to deny it, but he couldn't, not completely. She was right, in a way. He was destroying himself, just like he'd destroyed her. But he didn't know how to stop, didn't know how to let go. He left, the silence pressing in, the weight of his choices heavier than ever. Daniel sat in the lawyer's office, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and old paper. The room was small, the walls lined with bookshelves, the kind of place that felt formal, final. Across the table, Elena sat, her face pale, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't look at him, not really, her eyes fixed on the papers in front of her. Divorce papers. The end of 10 years, the end of everything. Daniel stared at them, the words blurring together, his chest tight, his mind heavy. This was it, the last step, the final cut. But it didn't feel like closure. It felt like a wound, still raw, still bleeding. The lawyer, a middle-aged man with a tired voice, explained the terms. Assets divided, no alimony, no kids to fight over. It was simple, clean, but it didn't feel simple. It felt messy, complicated, like a tangle of lies and pain they'd both woven, thread by thread, until it choked them. Daniel signed his name, his hand steady, but inside, he was shaking. He watched Elena sign, her pen moving slowly, her face unreadable. And then it was done. They were done. They stepped outside, the air cold, the sky gray. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in weeks. She looked tired, older, the lines around her eyes deeper, her hair dull. She looked like someone who'd lost something, someone who'd paid a price. He wondered if he looked the same, if she could see the weight he carried, the weight of his choices, his revenge, his pain. "Elena," he said, his voice low, steady. She looked up, her eyes meeting his, and for a moment, it was just them, standing there. No lies, no masks. "I need to say something before we walk away. I need you to hear it." She nodded, her face pale, her hands twisting together. "Okay," she said, her voice soft, but steady. "Say it." He took a breath, the words heavy, sharp. "I read your journal," he said, watching her flinch, her eyes darting to the side. "I saw what you wrote, about feeling trapped, invisible, about me failing you. And I know I did. I was gone, too much, too often. I didn't see you, didn't hear you. I failed you, Elena, and I'm sorry for that. But you failed me too. You cheated, you lied, you laughed about it. You broke us, just as much as I did. And I wanted to hurt you, to make you feel what I felt. I did that, and I'm sorry for that, too. But it didn't fix anything. It didn't heal me. It just made it worse." She stared at him, her eyes wet, her face pale. "Daniel," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I hurt you. I know I broke us. And I'm sorry, too. I was lonely, angry, desperate. I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, and I regret them. I've started therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did, why I hurt you. But you hurt me, too. The leaks, the rumors, the destruction, you wanted me to suffer, and I did. But it didn't fix us, either. It just made us both worse." The words hung in the air, heavy, final. Daniel looked at her, his chest tight, his mind racing. They were both sorry, both broken, both lost. But sorry wasn't enough, not anymore. It couldn't undo the lies, the betrayal, the pain. It couldn't fix what they'd done, to each other, to themselves. "I don't know how to forgive you," he said, his voice low, steady. "I don't know if I ever will. But I'm trying to let go, to move on, to find something better. I'm going to therapy, too, trying to figure out who I am, without you, without this. I hope you find that, too, Elena. I hope you find something real, something true. But it won't be with me. She nodded, her eyes wet, her face pale. I hope that for you too, she said, her voice soft, breaking. I hope you find peace, Daniel. I hope we both do. They stood there, the silence pressing in, the weight of their choices heavy between them. And then she turned, walking away, her footsteps slow, her figure shrinking into the distance. Daniel watched her go, his chest tight, his mind heavy. He felt the ache, the loss, the emptiness, but he also felt something else, something small, something fragile. Hope, maybe. Not for them, not for the past, but for the future, for something new. He drove to his new apartment, a small place across town, the kind of place that felt temporary, like a stopover. He unpacked his boxes, his hands moving slowly, his mind replaying their conversation. He thought about the journal, the leaks, the rumors, the destruction. He thought about Lydia's warning, her plea, her hope. He thought about therapy, about the sessions he'd started, the questions he'd asked, the answers he'd found. It wasn't easy, facing himself, facing his pain, his anger, his guilt. But it was necessary, he knew that. It was the only way forward, the only way out. He sat on the couch, the room quiet, the silence different now, softer, less heavy. He opened his phone, scrolling through the contacts, stopping at Lydia's name. He typed a message, short, simple. I'm trying, Lydia. I'm trying to let go. Thanks for being there. He hit send, the silence settling around him, the weight lifting, just a little. He looked out the window, the sky gray, the street quiet. He thought about Elena, about her therapy, her journey, her future. He didn't know where she'd go, what she'd do, who she'd be. He didn't need to know. She was her own story now, separate, distinct. And he was his own, too, starting over, piece by piece, step by step. He stood, walking to the door, stepping outside. The air was cold, the wind sharp, but he didn't mind. He walked down the street, past their old house, the place where it all began, where it all ended. He stopped, looking at it. The windows dark, the memories heavy. He saw her, in the distance, watching from the porch, her face unreadable, her figure small. He nodded, once, and turned away, walking on, leaving it behind. The street stretched ahead, empty, quiet, but not lonely, not anymore. He felt the weight, still there, but lighter, softer, manageable. He felt the hope, still fragile, but growing, stronger, real. He walked on, into the gray, into the future, into himself. Thanks for listening to this story. Did it resonate with you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like and subscribe for more stories. Until next time, keep reflecting. See you soon in our next story.